Dan Rappaport, you were in the press conference yesterday, or 2 days ago, I guess. Yesterday. With Mr. Jay Monahan, who's commissioner of the PGA Tour still, which surprises a lot of people. You asked the first question?
Yes, sir.
How'd it go?
It went well. First, front and center.
What'd you ask him?
I asked him what he would do differently over the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't really have an answer. He was a little testy yesterday. I was surprised. They asked him, they were obviously most of the questions were about the future and live and this, that, and the other. But one guy asked him about Jon Rahm because he was like, we haven't spoken to you since Jon Rahm left, reigning Masters champion. Basically, the question was like, were you disappointed and are you worried about losing more players as the negotiations continue? And he basically said, I'm worried about what I can control, which is making the PGA Tour better. And then the guy followed up and goes, yeah, but what about Jon Rahm leaving? And he goes, I just answered your question, which was like, it was the perfect opportunity. And we were talking about this, Riggs, for him to just give the human answer, which is, yeah, it was really bad losing Jon. He's an incredible player, great champion. He's the exact type of person we want on the PGA Tour. And yeah, anytime we lose a player, it's difficult personally and for the organization. That would have been such a human answer. It would have given him some PR points. Instead, he was coached up. He was really, really coached up the whole time, which makes me think that this deal might actually be close. That's what he seemed to suggest.
Yeah, so I'm always amazed about in press conferences, in front of the media, whatever, whenever certain people, for whatever reason, feel like, believed, or coached up to believe and then deliver, that they can't even address something. I've never understood that. Like, what is always amazing to me is how, like, we're supposed to be able to communicate and discuss anything. That's what we do. We're like people, and nothing is to that level where you can't even discuss it or approach it or comment on it. Nothing. And so, especially if you're the commissioner of the PGA Tour and you're up there and somebody asks you about your second best player, basically, Jon Rahm, or Scottie Scheffler is probably the number one player. Everybody agrees that at this point. But like Jon Rahm is probably their second best player, highest ranked star, Masters, reigning Masters champ. Like you said at the beginning of last year, he won like 4 tournaments, whatever. And him leaving, and the fact that you can't even address it or discuss it or talk about it, and that you have like this almost like he who must not be named, Harry Potter like reaction when somebody says it is so bizarre. That's like the weirdest human reaction of all time. Like, and that's why you and I were talking about where I just said, like, how can he not have just a normal, I know for a fact that Jay Monahan has had the conversation with his friends, with his family, with his wife, with
Jon Rahm
about Jon Rahm 500 times since it happened. And I guarantee he's given a very normal, in that situation, answer of like, God, it's fucking devastating. I think John's going to go right before he goes. It sounds really a lot like he's going to go. That's going to suck. We're going to get a negative press about that. Why can't you give that same fucking answer when you're asked about it? Why can't you just say like, hey, guys, like, yeah, to be honest, it put a lot of stress on our organization. It really opened our eyes to a lot of different things. It might have been a big part of the reason that we kind of, sped things up with the SSG group. And like Jon Rahm, he and I were very close. I felt horrible when he got booted from the memorial when he had the 6-shot lead, and his response to that was great. He's a great human, and like it really sucks that he left. Like, how would that be a negative if you gave that answer?
Yeah, and I think it doubly so because you understand why he couldn't give specifics on the negotiation, right? Like what the future's going to look like, how close they are. That, is probably, these are billion-dollar negotiations. But the Jon Rahm question wasn't about that. No. It was just a normal human question. Give us your
Hey, did it suck when Jon Rahm left? Yep.
All the reasons you guys are listening, it's the opposite, and it's why people like Dana White. Like if you are
or Portnoy, like you can
Dave's the same way.
Yep.
When you are an entity like that with a sports league or with Dave with Barstool Sports, his attitude and his answers, they sort of shape how people feel about that entity. Yeah. And you are so at the helm, and you feel like Dana White. If you ask him a question, or if you ask Dave, you're going to get a real answer, and you're going to get a feel for what the company actually feels about whatever subject you're talking about. Jay Monahan, for whatever reason, and I get that they're in negotiation, so you don't want to say everything. It's different with the Rahm question, where just give us something. Like, show us that you're a human being. Because outside of that, everyone now just looks at the PGA Tour like, oh, that's the commissioner who gets mad when you ask him a simple question about a guy who left his tour.
And I asked a bunch of guys today about their confidence level in him, and they are, other than Rory, who said in full swing that like Jay's basically his best friend, who, Rory said, I think he's great, and he pointed to all the things that he's done. Meanwhile, Xander Schauffele was like, trust is a tender thing, and he's got a long way to go with me. And Victor Hovland was like, I just don't understand why he didn't take accountability. They asked Cantlay, who's big time on the board, whether he thinks that Monahan's the right guy, and he said, I just think it's all important that we move in the right direction. He also wouldn't answer the question. So
yeah, he was doubled up on that, and he didn't change it at all.
The
guy's like, I didn't ask you about like rowing in the right direction. This isn't fucking like chill out. This isn't crew.
Yeah.
He was like, I asked you about like, do you think Jay Monahan is the right guy? And he literally, we should still row in the right direction. He said it again.
Yeah. So I really don't think that he has. I think if there was like an anonymous poll of PGA Tour players, do you want Jay Monahan to be the leader of this thing? I don't think more than 50% would say yes. I've said this before on this podcast. It reminds me of Tom Wamsgams in Succession. He's a pain sponge. I think that he's like their pain sponge. I think it's like he's taken a beating, and he's going to continue to take a beating, and they can do stuff in the background. But I am very surprised. I'm very surprised that he's basically got a promotion. Like the CEO of this thing, he's going to make a gazillion dollars.
My take on that is that I think he'll be out the minute that the deals are finally done and it's actually pointed now in the right direction. Because I still think that he is basically no one that's qualified and would do a killer job as the commissioner wants to take over right now. I think you want to wait. You want him to have to finish what he started because it currently looks like it's still going down more than it's going up in terms of public opinion, in terms of what it would look like for you if you took over. And so I think that even if I know a lot of folks' reaction. I get this. You guys do, I'm sure, from all your friends. My dad, whenever we talk, I can't believe Jay Monahan's still in there. It's crazy. And my theory is just that he won't be. But right now, he has to be. Nobody wants that job. I don't know anyone that would want to go into a situation that most likely for those first several months, you're still going to get hammered like you're not doing a good job. And then public opinion right away is going to go down on you as like, yo, this guy sucks at this job too because he's not getting this done, that done. And they're going to, the minute, plus Yasser's going to come in. So the minute that they took somebody else, if they kicked Jay out, booted him out, whatever, and then some absolute stud came in, let's say Seth Waugh or whoever, like somebody that we like, that everybody likes comes in, and Yasser's going to go and pay, who knows, Xander or Rory or Scotty $700 million, take him so that first guy's month is a massive loss, and then that guy's fucked and is like, well, and then people are like, this guy stinks, he should be out. So my theory in the whole thing is that whoever the qualified candidates are, they're going to let Jay ride it out while it stinks, while the public opinion is bad. It's going to continue to be bad. Once these deals are done, whatever happens with the PIF combined with the SSG and all that, then once they're sort of looking kind of good, then I think people are going to be surprised because at that point when Jay finally is like starting to get some positive stuff, I think they're going to boot him and put somebody in there who's good.